Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we'll be doing a bit of plagiarism and copying an idea that the YouTuber Martin Pants had, with one big difference. Instead of showing you wacky tactics you can run in a Battlefield game, I'll be showing you dozens of the goofiest, kookiest tactics you can run on the game mode Powershift in the first-person shooter, the finals. Some of these tactics are pretty good, some of them are pretty bad, and some of them are just a cheeky way for you to mess with the enemy team. We'll be starting at F tier and going all the way to S tier. Keep in mind, these rankings are all based on my experience as a mostly solo player in public matches. Some of these tactics are likely a lot better if you're playing with some friends, so once you finish the video, load up the finals with some friends, hop into Powershift, and try them out for yourself. There's a lot of tactics to get through, so let's get right into it. Or, as the Frog Band would say, let us begin.
Big ass beatdown coming up!
F-tier Powershift tactics are insanely stupid, and you should avoid doing them unless you don't mind your teammates getting mad at you for throwing the game. Anyone who watches the Frogman probably knows what the first one will be. That's right, it's the long-range sniper. Now, I would like to emphasize that this isn't a dig at all snipers, but rather the ones who like to sit way out in Kyoto when we're fighting in Monaco, or to be more precise, about 80 plus meters away from the platform. If you're a light sniper, I want you to listen very carefully. Do not do this. Contrary to what Reddit says, a sniper in Powershift isn't terribly hard to deal with unless you're just a god with the sniper. But let's be honest, most people are not that good with this weapon, and you're only making yourself perform even worse by sitting God knows where trying to hit a long-range headshot. The biggest issue with sitting this far from the platform is the fact that the sniper is no longer a hit scan weapon past 40 meters. So you'll have to lead your shots, which, as you can imagine, is pretty hard to do in a game where people can dash, grapple, set up shields, use a jump pad. You get the point. Not to mention that half of the time you'll get stuck wasting your entire match fighting another sniper. I know you might think getting 2 kills and 3 assists with 0 objective score is extremely useful to the team, but once we go over the other strategies you could be doing instead, you'll see how useless sitting in the back of the map with a sniper is. F tier. On the opposite side of the spectrum, we have the Rambo Light Main. We all know this guy, and I think we can all agree that he has the right spirit, but maybe dial it back a bit. A lot of people give light players flack for not getting on the platform, but there's a good reason for it. Light players die in about 3 hits to a wet noodle, which makes bum rushing a platform with a bunch of enemy shields, turrets, and probably some mines on it a one-way ticket to the spectator screen. Sure, you might kill one enemy before you die, but it won't mean much after you die and they get revived again. The only way this can be somewhat effective is if you're really good at dashing in, getting a kill, then running away, but even that'll be pretty hard to do against a competent enemy team. F tier.
I'm your worst nightmare.
Up next in F tier, we have the Orbital Laser. I was inspired to try this out by a Reddit post where someone stood still underneath the platform while the Orbital Laser event was active and got a kill with it. So once I saw the Orbital Laser event show up in my games, I tried it out for myself and came to some horrible realizations. Enemy teams with vision even slightly better than a naked mole rat are going to see you trying to sneak under the platform. The lasers have to be timed very precisely to do any amount of meaningful damage. Not to mention the fact that the platform itself will just straight up fucking kill you if it's low enough to the ground while you're underneath it. This is already a niche strategy because you can only do it during a random game show event, but even if you were able to put in the tremendous amount of effort required to get this strategy to work, you could be doing 100 other things that are way more useful. Like, you know, shooting the people on the platform.
Hey moron, instead of looking at the coins underneath, why don't you fight?
F tier. Dog shit. Finally, we have my favorite tactic up to this point. Don't get too excited though, we're still in F tier. I call this tactic the Dirty Bomb. You might remember the Season 1 days where you could strap a bunch of explosives to barrels, then throw them at enemies and get some cheeky kills. These were nicknamed nukes and ICBMs by the community, but eventually our weapons of mass destruction were confiscated by Uncle Sam. So now all we have is an improvised dirty bomb. The Embark approved way to use explosives on barrels. Put a bunch of explosives on a barrel, then pick it up and deliver it to a platform with enemies on it. I find this works best with fire barrels as they don't instantly explode when hit with a bullet, and you can throw them a very small distance. Once the bomb is on the platform, spam the absolute shit out of the C4 trigger, and if you're lucky, you'll get a nasty kill. But since you have to manually deliver the bomb to the platform, as a fat and slow heavy player, sneak past all the enemy players around the platform, and play very cautiously to make sure a stray bullet doesn't hit your barrel, you're gonna eat shit in most of your attempts to do this. But in the rare occasion it does work, it is downright hilarious. But I can't ignore how bad it is in 9 out of 10 circumstances just because it's funny when it does work. F tier. Rest in peace, nukes.
Legalize nuclear bombs.
You know me as low tier God.
Here in D tier, we have some goofy tactics with some niche uses, but it's not that hard to be more useful than F tier, so they're still not that great. First up, we have the heavy explosive spammer. Grab all the explosives you can on the heavy class and show everyone on the platform what it's like to experience a World War I artillery barrage. Sounds like something that should be useful, right? Unfortunately, you couldn't be more wrong. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely a bit of fun to blow up everything on the platform, but the problem is the MGL-32 requires a degree in physics to use effectively on the platform, especially since the platform will rock around like a shitty boat in rough seas every time there's an explosion on it. Not to mention that all the enemy team really needs to shut you down is 1, maybe 2 APS turrets, which almost every medium player will have. Also, if you get caught outdoors, which is where the platform usually is, or if a couple of enemies decide to chase you down, you're kind of just fucked. Fun for a bit if you have a Oonga Boonga me-like explosion brain, but not very useful. D tier. Sorry about that, truce. Speaking of grenade launchers, the CO-40. Not the launcher itself, but a tactic involving this weapon I like to call the goo mortar. I was inspired to try this out by another finals YouTuber named Uncle Stick, and once again, I quickly realized that this is a tactic that looked fun, but is only really effective against lobotomized players. For the uninitiated, this tactic involves you using a zipline and goo grenades to set up your launcher in a high-up spot, then shoot at all the ants on the platform or running around. Simple enough, and it can definitely get you a few cheeky kills, but there's some pretty big flaws with this strategy. The biggest problem is the fact that you'll stick out like a sore thumb. The goo is an obvious indicator of where you are, and so is the launcher you use. It's loud, it has a trail behind the projectiles you launch. Basically, while you're doing this, you'll be broadcasting to the entire enemy team that you're an easy kill, especially since their bullets travel way faster than your grenades. But even if they don't bother killing you, all they need to do is set up an APS on the platform, and you're basically useless because of how slow the launcher shoots and reloads. When I was capturing footage for this tactic, I came across a team of 5 medium players who stacked APS on the platform, and at that point, I would have been more useful if I left the game so somebody else could take my spot. If you do decide to try out this strategy despite its flaws, I'd recommend doing it on the maps Cis Horizon or Seoul, since they both have some really tall towers you can set up on. But still, despite the creativity of this tactic, there's significantly better ways to use the CO-40. D tier. Now let's do a 180 and head back to the heavy class with a strategy I like to call platform yanking.
I like it, cut G.
Equip a winch claw, the anti-gravity cube, then use the gravity cube to force enemies on the platform into the air. Grab them with the claw and look them deep in the eye as you turn them into a bunch of coins. It's a pretty funny tactic, and I imagine it looks like something straight out of a horror movie from the enemy perspective. But you need some good map knowledge to know the best spots to set up, and you gotta be pretty sneaky to get this to work with some consistency, which is kind of hard to do as a heavy. This is also only good for one enemy at a time, so it's kind of a waste of potential for heavy players, since there's other things you can do to clear multiple enemies at a time off of the platform. So as you can imagine, this strategy completely falls apart against coordinated enemies. If you decide to do this, I recommend a good close-range weapon like the Shack 50 or Flamethrower, and I also suggest you throw the gravity cube in front of whatever direction the platform is going, rather than on the platform. That way it doesn't get zapped by an APS. Fun strategy, but not that effective. D tier.
Get over here!
So, you've chosen to play heavy, but the platform yanking requires way too many brain cells for your taste. Fortunately, we have the bulldozer tactic. The bulldozer goes out of his way to destroy buildings. Not just senseless destruction, but rather a controlled demolition of buildings near the platform to prevent enemies from camping on top of them. Use the charge and slam along with the sledgehammer, C4, and the RPG, run over to the foundation of whatever building is nearest to the platform, and start breaking shit. Keep an eye out for enemies, as they'll probably get annoyed at you destroying the floor underneath them, and hopefully you're a big enough distraction for your team to take the platform. Now this comes with the obvious downside that your teammates won't be able to camp on those buildings either. So if your team is using weapons that require some good high ground, you might be doing more harm than good, especially if the enemy team took the platform first. Still though, if you end up with that one challenge to deal damage to the arena, I would much rather see you do this than waste a slot on the team by destroying buildings out in God knows where, while the rest of us suffer on the platform. D tier. Now, if you're adamant about digging around in spawn, maybe consider doing it in the enemy spawn with the spawn camper tactic. Head over to the area that enemies are spawning from, which is basically in the direction the platform goes if your team is controlling it. Listen out for enemies spawning in and start causing some trouble. I recommend getting up to a good high ground spot, setting up a cheeky trap or two, and shooting enemies in the back, or setting up some kind of fortifications to make it hard for them to push you out. This probably sounds like an amazing strategy deserving of at least B tier, but it's not. Maybe it is if you have some buddies join you while somebody holds down the platform, but in my experience as a solo player, it's only really useful against heavy players, as any good light or medium player will have a dozen different ways to easily escape spawn. The spawns will also shift around a lot throughout the match, so you have to constantly relocate as the platform moves. It's not really as simple as camping in one spot. Then there's the fact that your team will actually have to kill enemies for them to go back to spawn and play the objective, and anyone who's played Powershift knows that this is not happening half of the time. I'm not just saying this because I don't want people spawn camping, it is genuinely way worse of a strategy than I thought it would be. D tier. Another strategy that might seem pretty good but really isn't is having 4 or 5 light players on your team, or as I call it, a mosquito swarm. Now, I know some of you are thinking I'm crazy for considering this as a low-tier strategy because you got shit on by a bunch of light players that one time, but get off of r/the finals for a second and really think about how good having 4 or 5 people with basically zero defensive utility on the team is. Sure, a bunch of light players flying and dashing around with snipers or Mac 11s can be pretty annoying to fight, but any team that's even half coordinated will realize that bunching up on the platform with APS and shields will immediately render this strategy useless. You know, a big part of Powershift is actually being able to defend the platform, and if your team is all light players, you don't really have a way to defend the platform. So once you start taking fire, you're gonna have to rotate on and off the platform with the other light players, and considering how allergic the average light player is to playing the objective, good luck with that. The only reason this strategy isn't in the F tier is because if you and your buddies are absolutely cracked with the light class, you might be able to kill the enemy team enough that they can't touch the platform at all. And if you're really lucky, maybe you'll annoy them enough to make them leave the match and go type an angry post on Reddit. But most light players aren't that good, so this strategy is going straight to D tier. Now, if you're noticing too many light players getting too comfortable on the platform, consider keeping everybody off the platform with the God of Fire tactic. Trust me, it sounds a lot cooler than it actually is. Get yourself a goo gun, goo grenade, every fire gadget you can get your hands on, and start gooing all over the platform.
What do you mean by that?
Once an enemy steps foot on the platform, set the goo on fire and watch it all burn. This basically makes the platform completely uninhabitable for a little bit, as anyone who steps on the platform will start to burn. However, anyone who steps on the platform will start to burn, and this includes your teammates. It also takes a lot of time to set up, and you're pretty vulnerable to enemy fire while you do. Plus, all the enemy team really needs to do is set the goo on fire themselves, and now you're back to square one. It's fun to watch the platform burn, but not very effective. D tier.
Burn those motherfuckers!
They're thinking about picking up a gun, and we want to convince them that they shouldn't do that.
C tier is where we get into strategies that actually start to be useful without requiring Herculean effort or extremely lucky matchmaking to make work. In other words, the real fun starts here. First up, we have the Powershift sweat, also known as the kill whore. In Powershift, most people's actions tend to be centered around occupying the platform, but not if you're a kill whore. The kill whore doesn't play the objective. Instead, he equips whatever weapon their favorite finals YouTuber put at the top of their latest tier list, a gadget or two for movement, and he runs around the map getting as many kills as humanly possible. Now, I can admit that this strategy can actually be pretty fun, because everybody loves hearing that little cash ding that plays when you get a kill. However, You can get over 20 kills in a match, and it won't matter if the rest of your team isn't holding down the platform, and oftentimes, they will not hold down the platform. It's also worth noting that the more you kill the enemy team, the more likely they are to start hunting you down. Or, if they're smart, they'll group up and take the platform together, and then they'll just heal each other faster than you can kill them. If you have good aim, this can be very effective against uncoordinated and scattered enemy teams. But it falls apart as a strategy once they start using their brains and group up on the platform. C tier.
Target neutralized.
Speaking of platform defense, we have the platform of horrors. As a medium player, you have access to not just 1 or 2, but 3 different types of mines. And you can also bolster your defenses with a sentry gun. So grab all of these gadgets, get to the platform, and put your turrets and mines all over the place. Now you don't have to stay on the platform for this to work, but if you do stay on the platform, you can keep placing more mines as they recharge and maintain your turret's health by moving it around. Enemies that step on your platform will have to contend with your glitch mines shutting down their abilities, a turret shooting at them, you and your teammates shooting at them, and if they make a wrong step, explosions and gas right at their feet. Basically, the platform is a horrible place to be. Light players will likely be eviscerated within a couple of seconds since their movement abilities will be disabled, so it's a great way to stop light players from bum rushing you. However, this strategy is vulnerable to the data reshaper or enemy grenades and explosives, since those can set off your mines. And you have to be really careful not to get yourself or your teammates killed by your own gas. C tier. Now, if you want to make being off the platform just as annoying as being on the platform, consider becoming a rat. Pick the light class and a loadout tailored for running away from enemies, then go annoy the shit out of the enemy team. Get some kills if you can, but for the most part, take a couple shots at them until they focus on you, then skedaddle. The enemy you shoot will likely waste several seconds of time looking out for it or chasing you, and because of this, they won't be shooting at your teammates. If you're good at multitasking, you can probably have 2 or 3 enemies at a time focusing on you, which means the rest of your team will have an easier time on the platform. Personally, I recommend a weapon with some range, invisibility bombs, and the grapple hook so you can be harder to see and get to the best spots to annoy multiple enemies from. The one big downside is that once the enemy team groups up on the platform, you won't be able to rat around anymore. C tier.
Where the rats?
Now that you've fried your neurons after playing so much light, you're probably looking for something a lot more stationary. Thankfully, you can basically stand still inside the goo bunker. Get yourself a goo gun, goo grenade, and some barricades, then take control of the platform and build yourself a nice little bunker. You can use barricades on top of the goo for some extra cover and an extra surface to build off of. I recommend a good close-range weapon as well as some smoke grenades to stop people from burning your goo. If you're a certified finals gooner, then you're probably way better at this than I am. But I did find some decent success with this strategy, since the enemy team was forced to fight me at close range inside my bunker. It's a fun way to hold down the platform, but you do need your team on board with this plan, cause otherwise they'll be off picking their nose while the whole enemy team swarms the bunker. Or even worse, they'll just charge through your bunker and get you killed. C tier. Alright, let's get back to giving light players more ways to piss people off with the flash and crash. This strategy's effectiveness is debatable since it's easily countered by APS on the platform, but when there isn't an APS around, it is straight up diabolical. Equip a flashbang and a glitch grenade, get to a good vantage point somewhat near the platform, and spam the shit out of your glitch and flash grenades, or in other words, flash them and then crash their gadgets, and then start taking some pot shots at them. There's nothing more annoying than not being able to see or use your gadgets, so this is guaranteed to piss someone off, and if your team is winning, probably make them leave the game. But like I said, the enemy team only really needs one APS to shut this down, so it's a really funny way to piss people off, but easily countered. C tier. But if you're a big fan of funny tactics that are easily countered, maybe consider the mobile turret. Find yourself a goo barrel, pick it up, and make it face forward. Then put it back down and put a sentry gun, APS, and glitch mine on it and begin terrorizing the lobby. For some bonus damage, you can have your friends load up even more sentries on the barrel, but it's not necessary. The APS will stop explosives from immediately setting off your barrel, and the glitch mines will stop light players from dashing away. This only really works with goo barrels, since any other barrel can be destroyed in basically one shot, so I would also recommend bringing along a data reshaper, as one charge can turn a smoke barrel into a goo barrel, and 2 charges will turn a red barrel into a goo barrel. Once the goo is destroyed, you'll have a bit of cover, but the turret will instantly be destroyed as well, so you'll have to wait a while to do it again. However, because of how rare it is to see someone doing this, a lot of enemies will opt to shoot you instead of the barrel, which is kind of hard to do with all the stuff blocking your hitbox, making you a very effective distraction. There's definitely better ways to play as a medium, but I'll be damned if this isn't an absolutely hilarious tactic. C tier. Okay, I know you CO40 mains might be feeling a bit disrespected with the last CO40 tactic being placed in D tier, so to close out C tier, here's a better one, the bunny launcher. Find a nice high ground spot over the platform, set down a jump pad, and hop up and down over and over while spamming grenades onto the platform. This is better than the goo mortar tactic since you'll be a moving target instead of a stationary one. However, this is still the CL40 we're talking about. You have to aim and lead your shots right, APS and shields will easily shut you down, and the grenades take forever to travel. You're also not going to last very long against teams with good aim, especially during low gravity. Still though, if you can get rid of APS with a data reshaper and have a light player shut down the shields that the heavies put up, and if your teammates keep the riflemen off of your ass, this is a good way to lock down the platform. You definitely need some team coordination to make this consistently viable, but it's very fun when you do have it. C tier.
There's one. There's one. There's one.
B tier is where the tactics start to have some consistency in their performance, provided you're decent at the game, while still remaining fun. Let's start by pissing off Reddit with the goo sniper. Now you're probably wondering what makes a goo and sniper user a lot better than a goo and grenade launcher user, but it's pretty simple. It takes a lot less time to set up and move around, and you'll have a way higher damage output as a goo sniper thanks to the grapple hook. This strategy works best on maps with big towers for you to grapple up to, but they're not necessary. Much like the goo launcher technique, throw a goo grenade at a high up or unconventional spot, grapple up there, and start taking some shots at your enemies. You'll likely be too high for a pyro grenade throw, and most light players never even touch thermal bores, so the enemy team will likely have to shoot at you, and you'll typically be at an advantage in that regard. Just be wary that this strategy gets harder and harder to pull off as the match goes on, since enemy light players are likely to start hunting you down. And you're easy to counter with shields, so I would bring a thermal bore and glitch grenades. Still though, I'm not even that good with the sniper, and I managed to do pretty good running this strategy. B tier. Up next, we have the minigun. Now I typically don't care to... Oh, Jesus Christ, can you please turn that thing off? Thank you. That's right, boys, the minigun. I usually don't care to single out individual weapons, but I think the minigun deserves its own slot because of how different the playstyle of this weapon is compared to other weapons in the heavy class. Now you can play this gun a couple different ways, stationary on a power position, or a lot more aggressive. If you want to play stationary, get to a good power position somewhat near the platform, set up a barricade or some other type of cover you can hide behind once your health is low, and let the minigun rip on the platform dwellers. This gun gives you stupid amounts of suppression with a 250 round drum magazine, and even if you don't get any kills, you're still giving your team a good diversion and window of attack. If you want to be more aggressive, then do some slide hopping to keep yourself as mobile as possible. The minigun absolutely shreds enemies at close range, and shields won't last very long against it either. And if you have a medium player healing you, you're basically a god amongst men with the amount of damage you deal and damage you can take. If you've been subscribed to me for a bit, you would know that I thought this gun was kind of shit at launch, but after a couple of buffs, it's a pretty solid weapon. It's only in B tier because the other LMGs in the heavy class offer significantly more mobility, which makes them a lot more versatile. Still though, a really fun way to play the game. B tier. Now, if you're getting a little bored sitting on the platform all day as a heavy player, consider abandoning it altogether and becoming a heavy rat. Bring a goo gun and grenade with you for some extra movement options. Make sure you have at least one gadget for countering light players, then run around the map causing trouble for the enemy team. This is basically the giant version of the light rat strategy we mentioned earlier, but it's a bit better because you can survive a lot longer as a heavy and easily keep multiple enemies distracted. Just keep in mind that those enemies you're distracting are liable to start swarming you if they spot you out in the open. You're definitely gonna win more games by fighting on and around the platform as a heavy player, but if you have good aim, good map knowledge, and good heavy movement, this is a very fun and somewhat effective way to play Powershift as a heavy. B tier.
I'm the giant rat.
Alright, I know you medium players are a little bit mad because you haven't gotten any attention in a bit, so here's another tactic for you. The gas man. Technically, every class can do this, but medium works best since they're the only class with gas mines. Get some smoke and gas, then run to the platform, throw some smoke on the platform, then throw the gas grenade and mines into the smoke cloud. Now, what makes this strategy so fucked is the fact that smoke counters fire, so enemies won't be able to destroy your gas by burning it if it's inside the smoke. Their only choice is to sit there and take damage or get off of the platform. Now, you gotta be good with your throws to cover as much of the platform as possible, and that can be a bit hard to do while being shot at. Then there's the high likelihood that you'll have to deal with an APS, so bring a good weapon for shooting them or a data reshaper, but that'll leave you with less gas. As you can see, it takes a bit to make this work, but you can get some big results when it does. B tier. Gentlemen, I must sincerely apologize. It seems a light player watched us messing around with smoke, and it gave them a devious idea: thermal smoke camping. For those of you who don't know, thermal vision can see through smoke, and the light class can equip both the smoke grenades and thermal vision. Interesting. Now, if you're someone with an IQ high enough to spell that word correctly, you probably put 2 and 2 together and realized that we're going to be getting up to a good spot, popping a smoke at our feet, activating thermal vision, and beaming down on our enemies from inside the smoke. From the enemy perspective, they just see a smoke cloud, and a lot of them won't even notice that's where the bullets are coming from. The thermal vision also lasts a good while, so you can keep this going for a bit by throwing down more smoke after a bit of time has passed. Eventually though, the enemy team is going to start becoming privy to your shenanigans, and they'll start shooting into the smoke clouds. So at that point, you'll have to start throwing down smoke in multiple spots to throw them off, and the smoke takes a good while to recharge, which leaves you with a couple gadget slots that could have gone to something more useful for light players. It's also a bit hard to tell when the smoke is wearing off while you have thermal vision active, but if your aim is cracked and you have good map knowledge, this can be a pretty fucked up way to mess with the enemy team. B tier. Alright, one more round of light shenanigans to finish off B tier, the team spotter. Get yourself a tracking dart and sonar grenades, then run around shooting enemies with the darts and throwing sonar grenades on common power positions. Basically, keep the enemy team spotted as much as possible. Now, having a wall hack on the enemies for a lot of the match might seem like it would be a completely busted strategy, but really, it's good but not busted. If your teammates are really good at capitalizing on information, then this is a legit way to rack up a lot of assists and support score, but as much as I hate to say this, a lot of random teammates you get in this game could have a permanent wall hack on the enemy team, and they will still find a way to fumble the bag. It's not entirely their fault though, as an enemy being spotted in this game doesn't mean as much as it does in other games, since the time to kill is a bit longer, and there's a lot of movement abilities that people can use to run away while they're spotted. But that's what you want to go for more than anything. Spot enemies to force them to go away from the platform until the spotting wears off. But if you have teammates who are really good at getting kills, then this tactic will be even better. B tier.
Enemy spotted.
I'm using a riot shield. What else do you want me to fucking use?
Oh, riot shield. I'm a pussy, I use riot shield.
Alright boys, welcome to A tier, where the tactics are really good and really fun, but they're not quite the best of the best. First up, we have the rooftop cleaner. Instead of being a sniper hiding on a rooftop far away from the platform, like half of the other light players in this mode, we'll be hunting those snipers, or really any other player perched up on some high ground. Equip a close-range weapon and a grapple hook, run around the map looking for rooftop campers, then grapple right next to them and take them out. Make sure your aim is good if you're fighting a medium or heavy player, as a lot of their weapons can kill you pretty fast, and don't try taking on grouped up enemies if you can help it. There's not always a sniper to hunt down since a lot of teams will just group up on the platform, but when there is, this is a great way to keep the rooftops clean and keep your buddies on the platform alive. A tier. Now, if you would rather play on the platform a little bit more, consider the spear. Calm down. I know you're about to dislike the video because I put the spear this high in the tier list, but hear me out. I know in most game modes the spear is basically a meme weapon, but in Powershift, it is a completely different story because of one specific attack, the spear spin. The spear's alternate attack button makes your character spin around, and this attack covers about a third of the platform while still doing some decent damage, and you can move a little bit while you do it. If you get the jump on an enemy team grouped up on the platform, you can do some serious damage with this attack. And if you set up some good defenses, you can force enemy teams to fight you on the platform and generally make taking it back a huge pain in the ass. Trust me, if you put in the time to learn the spear and run some good gadget combinations, this tactic is a very fun and effective way to take or hold down the platform. A tier. But let's assume for the sake of conversation that your spear warrior has fallen and you need to take the platform back. Well, it sounds like you're in need of a good platform ambush. Instead of bum rushing the platform and being turned to ash by a flamethrower, try channeling your inner Viet Cong and setting up a cheeky trap. The platform follows a set path, so you can find a spot in the direction it's traveling with good visibility. Set up a sentry, then once your sentry gun starts shooting, that's your cue to start shooting your weapon. By the time the enemy team sees you, they'll have suffered significant damage and they'll be split between shooting you or your sentry gun. Bring some grenades to throw once you run out of ammo, and the data reshaper to get rid of APS and barricades. This tactic requires a bit of patience and sneakiness, and there's always a risk that your ambush will fail horribly. But man, I've gotten some insane clips playing like this. Easily one of the best ways to take the platform back from the enemy team. A tier.
They're in the tree!
So, you've taken the platform, but holding it on your own as a medium is a bit difficult. In that case, consider becoming a shield warrior. Grab the riot shield, an APS, some goo, and a sentry gun, and lock down the platform all by yourself. Use the goo to block off the entrances, then stand right on top of your APS to stop enemies from shooting it or hitting you with a grenade. The third gadget is up to you, but I recommend something like the glitch mines to stop light players from dashing or grappling away if they decide to bum rush you. Once an enemy rushes you, the sentry will do some damage for you, so if you're decent with the shield, you should be able to handle 1 or 2 enemies on your own. This tactic is a bit weak against melee and flamethrower heavies, but it's a great solo way to hold off a couple of enemies camping on a nearby building. And if one of your heavy teammates joins you with some extra fortifications, it's even better. A tier.
You shall not pass!
Last up, we have glitch grenades. Light mains, for the love of God, please use glitch grenades. Glitch grenades can shut down enemy abilities and basically turn some enemies on the platform into sitting ducks. They destroy mesh shields and dome shields on impact, disable mines, turrets, and other placeable gadgets, and they can even show you where that invisible ratty-ass light player is hiding on the platform. Yes, I know they're easily countered by APS, which is why this isn't an S tier, but if you get rid of the APS, the glitch grenade is one of the greatest counters to a battleship, which we'll talk about shortly. I don't expect everyone to constantly play with the best gadgets in the game, but the amount of light players I see opting to shoot at people behind 3 shields instead of just throwing a glitch grenade tells me that it's more of an issue of people not knowing how good this gadget is. Even when I hop on comms and ask for at least one of the 4 light players on my team to use them, they never do. So if you're a light player on my team, please, I am begging you to use this gadget. A tier.
Disrupting their tech!
Okay boys, after all this time, we're finally at S tier. Unless you skipped straight to this section because you're a nerd. Yeah, that's right, I see you. You better go watch the rest of the video right now. Or else. These tactics are the best of the best for Powershift, and if you're a new player to Powershift, I would start here. First up, we have a tactic I mentioned just a little bit ago, the battleship. Grab some full auto weapons, RPGs, shields, APS, all that defensive stuff. Hop on the platform with some buddies and roleplay as a US Navy warship in hostile territory. This is probably a strategy you see people run all the time, and for good reason. It requires a coordinated team to deal with, gives you crazy amounts of defensive utility, and even if just a couple people on the platform have decent aim, you can keep people off of rooftops from behind the comfort of a shield. A good team running this tactic can be extremely frustrating to deal with, especially when your team consists of a bunch of Rambo light players that like to push the platform solo. It's also worth noting that most players don't seem to like running the gadgets you need to counter this strategy. We've already talked about how useful the glitch grenade is once you get rid of the APS, and we'll talk about a couple more shortly. But because a lot of people don't know how to counter this strategy, you can get some very easy wins playing like this. So easy, in fact, that it can start to get boring after a couple of matches. I genuinely don't understand why some people think light snipers are the hardest thing to deal with in Powershift, when this has been a thing since day one of the game mode being out, and it is 10 times more effective. It's an amazing strategy, and I can't deny that it belongs in S tier. Next up, we have the medic. By this, I don't just mean equipping a healing beam and healing people here and there, but rather equipping the healing beam, defibrillators, and focusing primarily on being a triage doctor. The second you notice a teammate taking damage or a dead teammate, you get over there as quickly as possible and you heal or revive them. Or, if you want to play a bit more passively, just stay on the platform and heal and revive your buddies as they take damage. The weapon you pick doesn't matter, but a good weapon does help, so you can get rid of enemies near your teammates' revive statues and help fend them off of the platform. The only real downsides to running this strategy is that if you have a team with a bunch of lights, it's gonna require so much healing and reviving in so many different places that you'll be getting stretched too thin. And if you're fighting a smart enemy team, they'll figure out that you're the medic pretty quickly and they'll start to target you. However, I can't deny just how effective a good medic in Powershift is. S tier.
Heroes never die.
So, your team fumbled the initial fight, and now the enemy team has full control of the platform, and they set up a crazy amount of fortifications. Lucky for you, you have the data reshaper. Medium players, for the love of God, please use the data reshaper. The data reshaper is basically an instant delete button for pretty much anything an enemy team would use in terms of platform defenses. Turrets, mines, APS, barricades, you get the point. Getting rid of these will allow you to shoot the enemies, throw some grenades, and push the platform without having to worry about extra damage from mines and turrets. The range on the reshaper is very generous, so you can use it without putting yourself at too much risk. The reshaper was recently nerfed, but even after the nerf, this is still an absolutely essential gadget for dealing with fortified platforms. But unfortunately, it is criminally underrated. S tier. Man, that's a pretty nice setup you have there on the platform. It would be a real shame if somebody ruined it.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
The glorious elbow slam. Are you tired of seeing the enemy team cruise by on easy mode with their battleships? Well, get up to some high ground and throw a 6'5", 250-pound wrench into their setup with the elbow slam. If you activate the charge and slam in the air, you'll slam onto the ground and deal damage to any enemies or gadgets in a small radius. The higher you slam from, the higher the damage. Make sure to bring a close-range weapon with you so you can follow up your big damage with even more big damage. I would also consider bringing some goo grenades to help you get up to some high ground faster, and an RPG for an opening shot before you slam in the rare instance that the enemy team forgot APS. If you push with some teammates, this is easily one of the best ways to clear a stubborn team with APS and shields off of the platform. But even if you're flying solo, you can still do a lot of damage and then your team can clean up the rest. Extremely useful tactic and extremely fun. S tier.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
Alright everyone, that about wraps it up for this video. But just a couple quick things before I leave. These tactics are designed and ranked for Powershift, but you can probably do some version of them in another game mode. And if a tactic you like to run wasn't discussed here, I wouldn't be very surprised, because the finals has a crazy amount of playstyle variety. So if I missed something that you like to do, feel free to make a comment about it below. This video was mostly being made during the first half of Season 6, so if you're wondering why anything that came out after that point wasn't mentioned here, that's why. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to make this video, cause I'm still editing it as I'm recording this outro, but I imagine it's gonna take a bit, so I would appreciate if you like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Not much more to say aside from that, so get in the game and start messing around. Thank you guys for watching, and have a good one. Also, Embark, please, for the love of God, add a Molotov cocktail skin to the game.